So you're trying to get into cybersecurity? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you an easy free lab that you can set up. And it's a lab that I personally used to get experience from my most recent cybersecurity analyst job. I'm going to show you how to set it up, detect and respond to malware just like a cybersecurity analyst would do. Hi, my name's AJ, and on this channel we teach all things cybersecurity for beginners. So let's get into it. So we're going to be building your own home lab. What I'm going to be using is AWS, and I'm going to be using a Windows instance. You don't need to use AWS if you don't want to. They do have a free tier, but you always do want to be careful that you're not setting up a virtual machine that could cost you money. The other way is to use VirtualBox or to use VMware, for example, and to download the Windows ISO and then install it that way. So that's one way that you can do it. But for this demonstration, I'm just using AWS. And then we're also going to be using the Elastic SIEM free trial with Elastic Defend. So that's what's going to be our SIEM. And then Elastic Defend is going to be our endpoint detection agent then that is going to allow us to detect malware and actually respond to it just like a cybersecurity analyst would do. So why does this actually matter then? So this allows us to kind of mimic the job of a cybersecurity analyst, because nearly all cybersecurity analysts are working inside a SIEM, which stands for Security Information Event Management Tool. If you imagine a network, imagine all the devices on a network, your servers, laptops, cloud devices, for example, they all generate logs. Well, those logs can be sent to a SIEM. A SIEM can have a set of rules. Those rules are called correlation rules. And if they detect malicious activity in those logs, then it'll send it to the cybersecurity analyst to review. So with endpoints, for example, we can set up something like Elastic Defend, so it can monitor our Windows endpoint. If it detects malware, it will send malware alerts to the cybersecurity analyst. And then this is where the cybersecurity analyst will then look to review those alerts and determine if it's either a true positive and something that needs to be responded to, or maybe it's a false positive and we don't need to engage the incident response process, and we likely maybe need to improve one of the SIEM rules. So overall, this is going to give you experience when it comes to actually applying for those jobs. And this is a project that I personally put on my resume and my CV, and you can as well. First up, we want to set up our Windows instance. So like I mentioned, I'm going to be using AWS. So to create an AWS account, very straightforward. Come to the AWS website. You will need to enter some credit card information, but this is access to the free tier. But like I said, always do be careful because they could end up charging you. If you didn't want to use AWS, like I mentioned, you could use something like VirtualBox to set up a Windows VM as well. But ultimately, the main thing is I just want you to get access to a Windows VM. So once we're in AWS, then what we can do is actually set up a new EC2 instance. And once we're in here, we can go to Launch Instance. And this is where it's going to allow us to set up our lab instance. So we can give it a name. We can look for Windows VMs in here, so Windows images. If we hit enter, as you can see here, it gives you availability to free tier eligible. So for this one, we're just going to use the Microsoft Windows Server. So then we can come in here then. So you can leave it as 1 gigabyte of memory. You want to create a key pair. So this is what's going to allow us to actually securely connect to the instance via RDP. So, which will allow us to actually remote into the machine so that we can access it via the user interface. So you just want to create a new key pair. You can enter your new key pair name, use the .pem format, and then create a new key pair. When you do this, it's going to download it to your machine, and then you'll be able to select the key pair here as well then. So I've already got one, so my key I can add in here. So you want to allow RDP, and you can select in here, and it'll show your IP address. Then you can keep everything else the same, and you can head over and select Launch Instance. Once you do that, then it will say that your instance is launched. You may need to give it a couple of minutes just to make sure that everything has installed correctly, but then it should show that the instance is running. So then you're going to want to be able to connect to it. So to do that, then you're going to click on the instance name, then you're going to click on connect, and then click on RDP client. And what you're going to want to do then is click get password. So this is going to give us the RDP admin password so that we can connect to it. So you click get password. So if you remember from earlier, we created that private key. Mine was called my key, whatever that you've called it. You're going to upload the key here, click on the key, and then click decrypt password. And then once you've done that, then a password will actually show up here for you and that you'll be able to use to connect to this instance. So my underlying OS is actually Mac OS. So I need to find an RDP client to actually connect to the instance via RDP. And on Mac OS, they use the Windows app, which was previously Remote Desktop. So you might just need to download this if you don't have an RDP client. If you're already on Windows, then they do have a native Remote Desktop client as well. But ultimately, you need to find the one that is suitable for your operating system. But if you're on Mac OS, then you can download this from the App Store. Then once it's installed, it's going to look like this. And you're going to want to then go to Add PC. And then you can put in the host name. So that's the IP address, which is the public IP, which you can find here. So this is the public IP. We can add that in. Credentials, you can add credentials. So what we're going to do here then is copy the credentials. So if we go back into Connect, RDP client, we can see that the username is administrator. And then the password then is the password that will be listed here after you've uploaded your key. So make sure you upload your key certificate. It'll give you the password and you'll be able to enter this password in here just like that. And then you'll be able to click add then. And then you should then be able to see a screen like this. And once you're in here, then you'll be able to select connect. And you likely will get a pop-up like this. You can continue, and then it will then look then to connect to your Windows virtual machine, and it will start the login process, and you should then be on a screen that looks like this. So you have successfully set up a Windows virtual machine in AWS. If you're not using AWS, then you should have still see this same screen if you're using VirtualBox and you've installed Windows correctly. Next up then, we want to set up our SIEM, and what we're going to be using is Elastic SIEM and their free trial. So you actually get a 14-day free trial. So you can just type into Google Elastic SIEM free trial, and you can see here, get started in 5 minutes. So you just want to go in here, click start free trial, and then it's going to ask you to sign up with your specific information, input all of your information. It shouldn't take very long. Once you've input the necessary information, what you're going to be able to do then is wait a couple of minutes, and it's actually going to create a cloud SIEM instance for you. And it will ultimately open you into a screen like this. You likely won't see any data in here yet because we haven't ingested anything, but you should be able to see a screen like this where it says security. So when you're going through the setup phase, click that you want to use Elastic SIEM for security, and then it'll set up this instance for you. So you've actually set up your first SIEM, so congratulations. Now what we're going to look to do now then is actually install Elastic Defend and make sure that logs from our Windows machine are being sent to the SIEM so that then we can ultimately start to detect malware. Then to be able to add an agent onto our virtual machine, what we want to do is go into assets and then go to agents. So what we're doing here then is installing an Elastic agent on our Windows machine so that we can collect the logs so that they can then be pushed to the Elastic SIEM so that we can start to detect malicious activity. So we've gone into assets and then agents. And then what you want to do then is click on Add Agent. And as you can see here, then it's going to automatically create a policy for you. So you can leave it as My First Agent Policy or whatever it's named it as. You can leave everything as default. And then you can go to Enroll in Fleet. So this is just going to add it into the fleet. And then you can install an Elastic agent on the host. And the way that we do that then, so we just need to copy this command, head over to our Windows virtual machine. What we want to do is open PowerShell, so we can go into PowerShell and run as administrator. So this will then open for you, where you can then paste in that command. And as you can see here, then it's going to start to install. So then you can paste in this command then, hit enter, and then it should begin the installation process. It should take a couple of minutes, but then you should see a message at the end that will say you've successfully installed Elastic Agent. And then to be able to confirm that, then when you come back into here, it will say confirm agent enrollment, and it will show a green tick here to say confirm that incoming data has come in. And then what this will look like then is that you'll be able to see the agent in your agents view. And as we can see here, then it's listed as healthy, which means that this agent has been successfully installed. So now that we've got an agent installed on our Windows virtual machine, what we want to do now then is actually install the integration. So in Elastic, you can install the agent, but then you can then install the the integrations to be able to collect certain data and even to be able to protect hosts, which is what we're going to do now with something called Elastic Defend. So Elastic Defend is very much like their antivirus and endpoint detection solution that they've created themselves. So the way that you do that, then you could just go into integrations, select Elastic Defend, and then click Add Elastic Defend. And what you're going to want to do here, then you're going to give it a name. So you give it Lab 1. You can leave it as complete EDR endpoint detection response, so we get everything that we need to actually detect malicious activity. You can click on existing hosts, and then you can click on that My First Agent policy. I've already attached this here, but what you're going to do is just click on that policy, click Save and Continue, and then what it's going to do then is add this integration to that policy. And then you can repeat the steps then for the system integration. So this collects system logs and metrics using the Elastic Agent. So again, we can go into Add System. And then what you can see here then is that we're going to be able to give it a name, collect the logs from system instances. So from the Windows event logs, this is what we're collecting is the application security and system logs. So these are the logs that are used to detect malicious activity in Windows. Again, you can add to existing hosts, select the policy that you've got here, and then click Save and Continue, and it's going to add it to that policy. And then once those two integrations are added, you'll be able to come back into Assets, and then if you go into your agents, you'll see the agent is here, but then you'll also see your policies. You'll be able to click on My First Agent policy, and you'll see that it's got these two integrations attached to it. So the idea is here then that you install an agent on the host itself. The agent then is a policy to tell the agent exactly what it is you want to collect. So in our case, we're collecting, as you can see here, we're using Elastic Defend as an endpoint detection agent to detect malicious activity. And then we're using the system agent then, the system integration to detect the specific Windows logs on there. So as you come in here, then you can look in the policy and the host for further information. It should show that it's healthy, and you should see that these are ticked as green then to show that it is successfully generating and actually capturing logs. You just need to give it a few minutes, and then if you go to the Discover tab, this is where you're going to start to see then that logs are actually starting to be ingested into the SIEM itself. So you are successfully sending logs from an endpoint to a SIEM, and next what we're going to be able to do is actually detect malicious activity and generate an alert for that and respond to it just like a cybersecurity analyst would do. So now that we've got an endpoint agent on our Windows machine and we've got logs ingested, you can even confirm that here where you go into Explore and then Hosts, and then this is going to show you additional events that are actually coming from that endpoint itself, so we can confirm further then that this is actually generating events and logs for us. And Elastic also creates these dashboards for you as well, so it can locate uncommon processes, different anomalies. So there's a lot that you can do with the SIEM. Creating dashboards is something that cybersecurity analysts will do to be able to view data and to respond to alerts much quicker, because ultimately if we can see the data and we can review the data in an easier format, it's going to allow us to respond quickly and help us understand what is actually taking place on a specific host, for example. So there's a lot in here that you can come and review, but what we're going to be looking at next then is actually the Alerts tab. So in here then, this is where the alerts will actually be generated. So as a cybersecurity analyst, me on a daily basis, I will always be reviewing the alerts in a SIEM, and it will be up to me then to actually respond to those alerts and either, like we mentioned, escalate it to our instant response process if it's a true positive, or if it's a false positive, we can look to actually fix or improve some of the SIEM rules that we've got. So a lot of the time as a cybersecurity analyst is actually spent in this page here. But when I mention the rules, if you are interested in seeing what rules can actually trigger, then you can actually come in here and go into rules, SIEM, detection rules, SIEM. And these are all of the pre-built rules that Elastic actually has then that can actually detect malicious activity on a particular system. And if you go to tags, you can see that they're from many, many different sources. So if you can ingest data from each one of these sources, there will be a set of pre-made rules that can actually look for malicious activities in the logs from the specific data source. So for example, our Windows machine, we can see that these are all the rules that they have related to Windows, for example. But an easy way to test if this is working in our alerts view is to actually go back to our Windows virtual machine and open up browser, Firefox, wherever you want to go to, and you want to go to this domain here. So this is actually the ecar.org, and what the ecar is a test file, anti-malware test file. So the file contains some specific characters, so I can actually show you here what that looks like. So if we go to this one, so you can actually see here, it's a text file that contains these random strings, and what it does is that it helps us flag and helps us detect. So what these random strings do is that they can flag a specific antivirus solution so that we can test to confirm that the system is actually working. So it flags based on the characters that are within this test file, for example. So what we want to do now then, we can download a copy of this zip file. So if we do download, so we've downloaded this here, and as we can see, we'll go and extract it here, and then we'll try and open this file. So it's saying that this app can't run. And you can see here then the malware alert is triggered from the endpoint agent, and you can see that the malware alert saying Elastic has actually removed this file for us. So now if we head back over to our SIEM, and if we go over and check the alerts tab, we can see then, so for today, that malware prevention alert has just triggered to let us know that some malware has been detected on this specific host within this specific user. So these are the type of alerts, like I mentioned, that cybersecurity analysts like myself will actually be responding to. This is where then it's up to you as an analyst to review these details then and go through to try and understand if this file is actually malicious. So we can see everything here then. So we can see the file path that was triggered. We can see the different processes. So we can see, you can analyze the processes in here as well to see where this actually triggered from. So it's showing that our Firefox.exe is a process that was involved here. So we can likely see that this was something that downloaded from the internet, for example. It gives us access to different insights, so that we know the host name, know that the account was the administrator, for example. So the idea here then is that you can come in here and take specific action. So you can go even further then. So an endpoint detection and response system actually allows you to respond. So if you wanted to isolate the host, for example, you could then look to isolate the host to disconnect it from the network. If it's confirmed as malware, to prevent that malware from spreading, for example. You could also look to respond. So you can use different queries in here to actually query the host itself. So this query, for example, can be used to actually try and grab a copy of the file, which is something that we often want to do as a cybersecurity analyst. We want to grab a copy of the file, do our own analysis on it to actually be able to confirm if this file is malicious or not. So there's a lot that you can do in here in terms of responding to endpoint detections. And as you can see here, it also gives you a lot of information. So it's giving us a risk score as well. So the idea here then is that you'd want to get as much evidence as possible to piece together an investigation. And often you could do things such as assign alerts. So I can assign this alert to myself, and then we can then look to actually work it. So maybe we've analyzed it and we confirmed that it is a malicious file and we want to do further investigation. We can then look to add it to a new case, and then we can create a new case. So if we create a case here, and this is going to add all of the information then to that specific case. So if we go into cases, and you can click view case, this is then our case where you as a cybersecurity analyst will be doing your investigation and updating it to make sure that everybody else in the team knows what you're currently working on and knows the update to that specific investigation. So usually alerts will go from alerts to cases when they require investigation. And then if you need to escalate it further, then that case then could be escalated through the instant response process if this is a confirmed malware outbreak and needs further response. So you can see that you can perform different actions on this case as well, like mark in progress, for example, and then close the case so everybody can actually see what it is that you've done. So you can come back into your cases and then you can see that your case is here. So what we've been able to do now is successfully test the endpoint detection agent is working on this Windows machine. We've actually generated an alert and we've responded to it just like a cybersecurity analyst would do by escalating that alert into an actual case as well. So there's a lot that you can take away from this project. Like I mentioned, I've used this project to get the current job that I'm doing as a cybersecurity analyst. And the reason for that is that this allowed me to understand how SIEMs actually work, how I can actually set them up, and how I can actually detect and respond to malicious activity. So this is actually more towards blue team engineering as well, which can really help you stand out as a cybersecurity analyst, as a lot of the jobs are changing from just requiring you to just be an analyst, more to be an analyst and an engineer. So what I want you to do now, go and explore this tool even more. You've got access to it for 14 days. If you did want to pay for it after, that is totally up to you. But do remember just before the 14 days to make sure that you cancel it and close down this deployment so that you're not getting charged. But like I said, go and explore this now. Have a look. Maybe even add more agents in here. Maybe try Linux, maybe try Mac OS agents, for example, and get more experience. So to conclude then, you now have a home lab that you can set up for free that can give you experience as a cybersecurity analyst. And what it's allowed you to do is set up your own SIEM at home, set up a detection agent to detect malware, and actually respond to it just like a cybersecurity analyst would do. So get this added to your resume, get some more experience as a cybersecurity analyst, start to learn the skills, and then start applying for those jobs as well. Now, if you want to know more about what I do day to day as a cybersecurity analyst, go and watch this video next. Thank you for watching. I'll see you over there.